miss Rooster Teeth. When the company announced they were closing last year, it seemed like there was a post every few seconds on their subreddit wondering what was going to happen to the cast and existing properties once the doors were finally shut. Now, I made a video about the launch of the new Rooster Teeth coming this summer and all the updates about the new direction that have been announced so far. However, it's not going to be including most of the former cast and properties that were there before, at least on a permanent basis at this point. With that in mind, as your guide, I'm going to take you through all the new shows that the former Rooster Teeth staff have launched, but don't worry, I know what you're thinking. I get it. You already feel like you're at your limit with consuming online content. You wouldn't even know where to fit in the new shows. That is why I, in addition to giving you the breakdown of the new productions, have paired every new production from former RT staff members with a day of the week that you will most enjoy them and it will fit the vibe. So let's start with Sunday. Maybe you had a wild weekend and you want to slow things down a bit, but also want to fight off that impending Monday anxiety. That's why I recommend you make yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to the Good Morning Gustavo podcast, formerly called the Enma podcast. If you don't know what it stands for, I'm not going to ruin it, but I'm sure someone in the comments will, so be careful. It's hosted by RT founders Gustavo Sorolla and Jeff Ramsey. The pair have been best friends since the late 90s, and the entire podcast serves as this testament and a love letter to their friendship over the years in Austin. Jeff and Gus talk about how they put their head down and were grinding through Rooster Teeth and really feel like they miss the evolution of the city. So what they do is they go to different coffee shops all around Austin, Texas, and talk about their memories of watching the city boom as they climbed to internet fame. The stories they tell are hilarious, and as someone who lives in Austin, it really just makes me want to go out and explore the city and really lifts my spirits for the week. They're also doing this really cool thing where they're recording 8 episodes at a time for release right now. Then at the end of the 8th episode of each set, Jeff and Gus come together and they both answer whether or not they want to keep the podcast going. If both sides agree, the podcast continues. If for whatever reason one side says no, the podcast ends. No hard feelings, no questions asked. The audio-only podcast is so endearing, and it's such an awesome encapsulation of this pure friendship that's just existed over 30 years in the same city. There's also some guy named Eric that asks questions sometimes to them and kind of makes them review the coffee that they drink because sometimes they forget. Moving on to Monday. The week has just started, and I know you don't want anything heavy. Sometimes the best way to start a new week is to give yourself something to think about or focus on to get you kind of through the final bell on Friday. For that, I can't think of a better podcast than So All Right. It's a relaxing but introspective way to start your week. This is another audio-only podcast that features just Jeff Ramsey. The best way I can describe it is to say that Jeff sits down with his laptop and an idea he wants to discuss. It could be anything from the first DVD ever created to why traffic can be so terrible in Austin. He has an extended discussion about it and lets his laptop take him down different rabbit holes. Jeff will also take the time to read fan emails and give thoughtful responses to community members who want to reach out to him for a variety of different reasons. All in all, it's a really easy way to get yourself into the right mindset for the week. That's Monday. Now, I think there may be some science to back me up on this, but in my opinion, Tuesday is the worst day of the week. Monday, we know it's going to suck. We already know. Wednesday's hump day, and we know we're halfway done. Tuesdays are the worst. I actually just had my car stolen from my driveway on a Tuesday a couple months ago. Tuesdays make me feel like the devil is pushing down on my shoulders. So what else is there to do than embrace it and listen to Good Morning from Hell? Now, this was a popular podcast back when Rooster Teeth was still chugging. At the helm is Blaine Gibson and Chris Damaris. Blaine plays a character called Clayton, if you don't know, who is Satan's younger brother, who has recruited Chris, who is a podcaster that recently passed away, to interview the different residents of hell to get their insights into the world above and below. This show features tons of guests doing fun impersonations, and it really helps shrug off the Tuesday blues. Most importantly, this is a project ran solely by Chris and Blaine. So I strongly recommend you go check out their Patreon, even as a free member, just to show your support for those guys. Their lowest tier is appropriately priced at $6.66 per month and comes with a ton of features for supporting them direct. In 2025, it's so important to support the content that you enjoy, and these guys are clearly making it worth your while to do so, so go check them out. They only have 2 tiers on Patreon, and the list of benefits you get from the cheaper tier is actually so long that I had to include a second image just to include them all. So hop over there and at least give them a free follow until you're ready to commit. Wednesday, hump day. This is the day where we push through. And personally, I like to reward myself. It can be awesome to switch things up in the middle of the week and maybe grab a drink from your local bar or try a new place to eat. On the way there, why don't you just consume something from 100% Eat? Now, this is formerly the podcast Face Jam. This project features Achievement Hunter veteran Michael Jones and the man behind the Rooster Teeth animated adventures, Jordan Swears. And they pair up with their man in a monkey mask, Nick, while they taste all the fast food creations and let us know what they think. Face Jam was very popular, but I want you to know how different things are if you haven't listened in a while. These guys are also doing their own Patreon, and they are putting in work. They feature fun shows like this thing called Ride Along, where they actually video themselves on the way to and from picking up the food that they're going to eat for the show. Not only that, but if you support them on Patreon, you also receive special access to a Michael and Jordan podcast called, well, the Michael Jordan Podcast. The team's dropping a ton of content every week for people who like both audio and video content. Plus, patrons get archived content dropped on them fairly regularly. It really feels like they're going the extra mile to make sure you feel like your support matters to them. Every now and then we get a guest appearance from Gracie when she can actually get away from her 9 to 5 and go into play mode, as she calls it, and grab a bite to eat with the guys. There is also this guy named Eric who sometimes shouts and is usually the guy who orders the food. Their Patreon actually has 4 different tiers. I have to say though, all of these projects are putting out a pretty good amount of content for free without signing up for the Patreon. I'd at least give it a shot to listen to the Michael Jordan podcast and see if it's something you'd want to keep hearing. It's a pretty fun additional show, but definitely not necessary if you want to just drop in to hear the guys talk about the food and have a great time. I already told you that I consider Tuesday to be the worst day of the week, but Thursday is actually my favorite day of the week. You're right there at the finish line, and Friday is just a single night's sleep away. The terrors of the week are nearly over, but maybe you want to add a little something mysterious or scary before you wake up refreshed on Friday morning. And for that, the best show to go with is RWBY. This is a show about mysteries, the supernatural, true crime, and it features Alfredo Diaz, formerly from Achievement Hunter, and Trevor Collins, who was the former manager of Achievement Hunter and Game Kids. Their chemistry is pretty undeniable, and the show was already a hit with Rooster Teeth before it closed its doors, so the guys actually just brought back the rights and have continued the show under the same name. Alfredo and Trevor have a really great back and forth in the main show. The usual cadence of the show is Trevor pitching a mystery to Alfredo and starts giving him all the things we know about the mystery, all the things we don't know. Then he starts hitting Alfredo with theories while Alfredo gives his own feedback and theories. Alfredo also serves as a great audience stand-in and asks questions right when you start to think about them. Full disclosure, this is my fiance's favorite content being made by the former Rooster Teeth crew, so I'm doing my best not to show my bias here. On top of the podcast, these guys offer a slew of other content. They do watch-alongs with movies, let's plays of horror video games, and frequently drop bonus content for their Patreon subscribers. They also just started a series called Break Room, which seems like it will be a more laid-back show, kind of talking about what's going on in their regular lives. They also have 4 different tiers of Patreon, and actually most of the bonus content is located on the first tier. So personally, I think if you tune in on Thursday night, right before bed, and you enjoy the chemistry between Trevor and Alfredo, you should give the Patreon a shot and see the rest of their bonus content. But now it's time for Friday, the wild day. If you party hard enough, don't worry, because you get the whole weekend to recover. So that means it's time to get wild. Maybe even time to get a little sloppy. That's why your new Friday show needs to be the Regulation Podcast. If you're someone who pines for the old days of Achievement Hunter or uses the words golden and age in the same sentence from time to time, then I think it's about time you move on to the Regulation Podcast. The cast of the show stars one of the strangest, coolest, unique individuals on Earth, Andrew Panton, and his buddies Jeff Ramsey, Gavin Free, and again, Monkey Mask Nick. The main show itself started as Jeff and Gavin desperately trying to make a show with their longtime friend Andrew. There's tons of content. Seriously. They actually put out an entire schedule for each week with something coming out every single day. So gone are the days of waiting all week for one Let's Play video like we were doing 10 years ago. And I've even posted a sample schedule so you can see what a typical week of content looks like from them. As for the content, the podcast itself is a back and forth with bits, long-running stories, pranks, competitions. One example I like to give without spoiling any bits that are too big or long-running, Andrew tries to out-nugget the Nuggets, where he made a bet that he can consume more chicken nuggets from McDonald's than the professional basketball team, the Denver Nuggets, can score in a single game. It's a wild time, but there's so much more to it than that. Aside from the main content, they post gameplay videos, they go live on Twitch every Friday. Some of their most popular content is actually their supplemental videos and things called drafts. The supplementals will usually be videos of the gang getting together in person and trying out an idea from the show. The drafts are hilarious. Basically, the hosts pick a topic, like worst songs ever, then each person will pick until they each compile their ultimate lists of the worst songs ever made, and then the community votes on who won. The Regulation Podcast has 4 different tiers on Patreon. Like the other shows, I have to stress that the base show is really great and will give you an amazing idea of whether or not you want to watch more from them. Plus, with this show and all the shows, it's okay to not consume every single thing the group puts out. Maybe you really like the podcast and maybe you don't really jive with the gameplay videos. And that's fine. The group keeps the lore of the podcast strictly to the podcast, and they'll catch up listeners to anything happening outside of the podcast so we can still follow along. And I do want to have a full disclosure moment. I am a moderator of the Regulation Podcast subreddit, which is something I really try to tell as few people as possible. But we have an unbelievable community. We really do. That makes it really easy for myself and other mods to kind of watch over. Everyone is extremely positive. I mean, unless they're kind of taking sides in an argument that happened on the podcast. And I would definitely recommend stopping by if you want that small dose of community. And just like how Good Morning Gustavo is a love letter, this podcast is more of a hate-filled love letter to like a best friend that recently stole your car but returned it in perfect condition. The chemistry between the group is constantly shifting between the different cast members, and while you might be siding with someone on one episode, the next episode will have you scratching their head and wondering how they could even see the world the way they see it. Oh, and there's also some guy named Eric that will kind of break into episodes every now and then and usually shout at the crew or sometimes shout at the fans. They say Saturdays are for the boys or the girls, so whichever one you believe, Saturdays are usually a bit more calm than Friday nights, but there's still plenty of time in the weekend left to have fun. That's why I'm choosing Tales from the Stinky Dragon as your best option for Saturday nights. This group is the largest of the post-Rooster Teeth groups and includes several former RT staff members, including the extremely talented Barbara Dunkelman, Blaine Gibson, our resident muscle man, Gus Sorolla, who's our resident Gus, Chris Damaris, appearing on his second podcast on the list, and John Reisinger, the former host of On the Spot and The Real Canon, John's brother Micah, and Ben Ernst. If you haven't heard about it yet somehow, several Rooster Teeth founders have described it as the most popular show at Rooster Teeth in the year before things shut down. At base, it's a Dungeons & Dragons show that's already been through several campaigns and featured multiple characters for each of its staff members. Tales from the Stinky Dragon went independent after Rooster Teeth closed its doors, and they actually partnered with Critical Role, a partnership that really seems picture perfect for both sides. And I've checked out the community several times, and it is easily the highest concentration of non-Rooster Teeth fans. In fact, when I reached out to a couple other fans to talk about what they liked most about the show, a few of them actually had no clue who Rooster Teeth or what Rooster Teeth even was. And that honestly makes me so happy for this whole cast. They worked at Rooster Teeth for a long time and they did great work and it was awesome. But they really all deserve to work on their next project and have their own thing. So I hope they get to continue making this their own show and really feel good about the direction it's heading in. Like Regulation, these guys put out a ton of content. I mean, they have their own puppet show that acts out moments from the podcast. It's like the old Rooster Teeth animated adventures, but with puppets. They also feature gameplays, they have casual podcast discussions, and live streams where fans can get more access to them. So wrap up your week with Stinky Dragon and get ready to do it all over again for your escapist entertainment. The week may be over, but I actually have 2 more shows I want to talk about. What happens when you're feeling a little devious? When you want to kind of slip out of bed, head down to the kitchen, maybe make yourself a midnight snack? Well, if you want a soundtrack to all your devilish behavior, I couldn't recommend Boyfriend Material enough. I make this recommendation knowing that there's a lot of criticism that surrounded how the Rooster Teeth podcast shifted from the usual cast to Armando Torres, Griff, and Andrew Rosas. And I know that people were upset to lose their favorite personalities on their favorite podcast. I listened to the RT podcast almost consecutively for 14 years, and honestly, I wasn't going to break my routine until I gave him a fair shot. If you didn't watch, you wouldn't know that these guys were putting in crazy work when they took over the Rooster Teeth podcast. Even up to when the company was closing, they were still churning out this content. They were actually making entire scripted skits that they would write, film, edit, and put out in front of each new episode every week. Now, this talented and charismatic group moved on to create a group called Midnight Snack and created the podcast Boyfriend Material. They describe it as a relationship advice show designed to ruin your relationship. As far as the content, I think a lot of people will look at media and say something wasn't made for them and kind of move on. So with that being said, as a straight white male in my mid-30s who has been with my fiance for 5 years and really struggles to keep up with what's cool in the dating scene and just in general, I can confidently say that I don't think I'm necessarily the target audience for this show. Still, this cast is so funny, and they just have some of the best consistent chemistry of honestly any of the shows I've discussed. I keep coming back every week, and I like each episode more than the last. And I am going to throw out a trigger warning for some other millennials if you're watching. They do say some negative things about the musical Hamilton, so maybe just grit your teeth if you hit that episode like I did. It passes, trust me. Midnight Snack has a Patreon with 6 different tiers. They have some secondary shows like R&D where they experiment with new ideas for the show, and a series called Andrew's Good Girls. I'll let you listen to that one on your own time. So give these guys a shot, if for no other reason. Do it for the crazy effort they put into the content, even after they knew the company was closing, just so we would have something to watch. What about when you want to catch up with an old friend? Maybe play some video games? If so, the vibe for you on this one is the Mikey Fredo Show. Achievement Hunter BFFs Michael Jones and Alfredo Diaz teamed up and are going back to their old gaming roots and cranking out Let's Plays and a podcast. I've checked out some of it, and the guys are bringing that classic Achievement Hunter chemistry. They also have a Patreon where you can support them with 3 different tiers. If you have some time, go check it out and see if it brings back some good memories and whether it makes you want to make new ones. Now, I'm not stupid. Well, okay, never mind. At least I'm not stupid enough to forget that there are certainly some RWBY fans that are here looking for any news about the new volume of RWBY. I've described all the other shows with days of the week or times that best match their vibe. But with RWBY, I want you to think of Chili's, the restaurant establishment. You've sat down, you're enjoying your chips and salsa, you just ordered your triple dipper for your entree, and all of a sudden you hear a sizzling noise. It's growing louder. You realize instantly what it is. You turn, you see the server walking past you. She's holding a sizzling pan of fajitas. You completely forgot about them, and they were just in the back cooking. That's RWBY right now. They are in the lab getting ready to drop a new volume on all of us out of nowhere. And that's not to say the gang isn't hard at work. The cast of RWBY has actually been all over the map. They've been hitting conventions and making promos to keep people on their toes. Check out their social media profiles and see if Lindsay, Kara, Aaron, and Barbara are coming to your town. They could probably sign one of your Blu-rays and maybe even give you some news about the show under the table. Because unfortunately, I don't have those kind of contacts or connections, so this is all the RWBY news I have for you. If you're still around, you may have one more question for me. Floppy Disk Repairman, how could you possibly know all of this? Do you support every one of their Patreons? And the answer to that question is yes. But I also had some help from the communities and got insight into some of the extra content for shows I haven't seen enough of yet. Also, I kept this video more focused on the projects everyone was working on because I felt that it was more appropriate than talking about each person individually. Not to mention, just because I didn't mention someone doesn't mean that they aren't necessarily working on something. Plenty of people worked at Rooster Teeth for years and are more than deserving of their time outside the public eye. And honestly, let's kind of face it, us Rooster Teeth fans can be a little much. Now, I will be doing another giveaway for this video. Subscribe and throw a comment down there about which new show you like the most or want to check out. What I'm going to do is get a Tier 1 Patreon membership for 10 random people. If you win, I'll reach out to you and ask you which show you want to support, and I'll send it to your email. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know if I missed anything, if you want me to cover something else, or if you just generally enjoy a more positive look at Rooster Teeth content from a longtime fan. Have a great night.
Okay, see you guys tomorrow, okay?